Hi everyone, and welcome to Science at Home. We're here today. My name is Anna, and we're here today with Gavin Ramsay once more, and he's going to tell us a little bit more about himself and his work here at Armagh. So I'm just going to dive right in. My first question for you is, where are you from, and how did you get to be in Armagh?
Good question. So I'm from Edinburgh in Scotland. And in comparison, Edinburgh is a desert compared to Northern Ireland. But it can be a very cold easterly breeze. So I did an undergraduate degree in Edinburgh University. Then I went to St Andrews University to do a master's. And that some of you might have heard Simon Jeffrey being interviewed by someone or your colleagues. He was I think he was a postdoc there, a research fellow, and so that was a long time ago. So I think we've both got grey hair in the intermediate time. Then I did a PhD in the Muller Space Science Lab, part of UCL, and then I did a postdoc in Utrecht in the Netherlands for a couple of years, and then I went back to MSSL as a postdoc for 10 or more years, and then whenever it was, I came to Armagh.
How did Armagh catch your attention then? Was it just a good offer, or?
Well, it was a good offer because one of the problems which researchers have is that it's difficult to get jobs which are not short-term contracts. So I'd been a postdoc in MSSL for a long time, and I think at one point I was the most experienced postdoc in astronomy in the whole of the UK, just doing research. So it was time to find a permanent job, and the Armagh position came up, and I was appointed at the same time as Jorik Vink and Stefano Bagnolo.
Brilliant. Okay, so we've heard a little bit about your research in previous videos, but just in case anyone hasn't seen them, can you explain the type of research that you do, just very briefly?
Yeah, so I basically use telescopes and satellites to study various objects. And mainly I'm using how their brightness changes over time to gain information about the object I'm looking at. So that can be generally, but we're not always, looking at how an object changes brightness in, say, in X-rays or in optical light and in different time scales to find out what's making these guys tick. So I'm looking at binary stars, so white dwarfs which are orbiting around each other on 5-minute time scales. I'm looking at flares from smaller stars or solar stars, and using satellites in space.
Brilliant. So you do use telescopes in your research then?
Oh, I've used telescopes throughout. I mean, so you get some astronomers or scientists who are maybe more theoretical. That's where their talents lie. Some more observational, and some who are particularly clever people who can do both. But I use telescopes. Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. So now, explaining your research, I think a lot of people would have sort of been very impressed at that. But are there any parts of your research that you find particularly difficult?
Yes. I mean, you don't do research just because it's easy. You're doing it because it is difficult, or no one's thought about doing it in a particular way. And so the biggest challenge to do for anyone who's doing research is it's the time scale. And for astronomy, many astronomy projects are done via very large collaborations or telescopes, which take a long time. So you need patience. So if anyone is planning to be a scientist, you need lots of patience. You need dedication, and things can go wrong. And so if you go to a telescope, for instance, it might rain the whole time, and you don't get anything. I remember
simple things, yeah.
Absolutely, going to one of the telescopes in Australia for 4 nights, and it poured for the four nights.
Oh, that's a shame. I'm
It
sure it was a
was,
great experience, though.
yeah. Well, and being in La Palma between Christmas and New Year, that was terrible. It was appalling weather,
Oh, wow.
dreadful.
So you sound, well, I know you definitely love what you do, but have you always loved astronomy, or did you come to that later in life?
Uh, I think I must have been interested, intrigued when the Voyager spacecraft reached first of all Jupiter and then
Mhm.
Saturn, and this was in the mid 70s, mid to late 70s, and yeah, that was a real kind of eye opener. But this was of interest to the wider public because this was in the days where, I think the BBC had special programs for when the first images were returned from the Voyager probes. You had Michael Burke, you had, is that his name, Michael Burke? Patrick Moore, and so this was live TV, and it
Yeah.
was kind of spectacular images. And then I think an uncle of mine gave me a telescope for my Christmas. It wasn't a very good telescope, but that wasn't it. And so I guess that sparked my interest in astronomy and what was trying to find out what was up there.
Yeah. It grabs everyone's imagination, doesn't it?
And seeing
To greater or lesser extents.
absolutely, and then I think seeing, say, Saturn through even a small telescope, and you can see the rings around Saturn. It's like, oh wow!
Yeah.
I mean, it's like a real live experience. It's like the difference between seeing a film on a say a small laptop and then seeing it on the big screen. There,
Yeah.
there's no comparison.
So you said you've been quite a lot of places. Yeah.
Mm, yeah.
Does one stand out in your mind? Do you have like what was the coolest place or the most unusual place, or even just your favorite?
Well, there's been several places now. Scientists again as well like to go or used to go to lots of conferences. Obviously, we're not doing that now. But I remember being two conferences stand out. One was in a resort close to the Barrier Reef in Australia, and that was the
Wow.
most spectacular place to have a conference. And also there was a conference in Thailand, which just coincided with a solar eclipse.
Oh, brilliant.
So I've been tried to see several solar eclipses, but that was the only one which was clear, and it was pretty spectacular. But the most, I guess, an observatory, a telescope, I think Hawaii is probably the most unusual and spectacular because it's so the altitude is, I forget what it is, 12,000 feet or whatever that is in meters. And you certainly feel the effects. And it is a bit like
Okay.
being in a strange lunar landscape. So that's pretty spectacular. Yeah.
Wow. I think most people would be happy to go to Hawaii for different reasons, but
Well,
that sounds brilliant.
one side of the island it always rains. Three o'clock it always rains, and the weather's miserable. But on the other side, it's very different. And then, of course, if you're at 15,000 feet, the weather is normally pretty good up there.
Brilliant. Okay, so we've come to our last question, but this is like the most important question. Certainly, I think so.
Okay.
Why should more people choose science for their career?
Well, that's a very good question, and I think um, in some ways today it's probably pretty obvious. If the whole world is hoping that someone or some lab, some groups of people are going to create a vaccine for the COVID-19, that's what scientists do.
Yeah,
Uh, and I think people can get into science in different ways. You can be a scientist who's studying some strange branch of science or whatever it is, or you could be an engineer who's designing, building parts of satellites or ground-based instruments or telescopes, or being a teacher who's teaching science. And I think maybe the most important thing is though, to have the wider population having a better understanding of numbers and statistics because we're being there's an avalanche on every news. You can hear about, everyone hears about statistics and numbers,
Yeah.
but far fewer people can actually make sense of of that. So in some ways, schools shouldn't be teaching about arcane calculus, which no one really uses. But every day, people have to, in principle, weigh up risk in some way or another. What do all these numbers, which are overwhelming us, what do they mean? And by being able to understand what these numbers are telling us, you can then actually ensure politicians are held to account.
That's a very good synopsis of why people should choose science for their career. Um, Obviously, I encourage everyone who's watching to try it out. Even if you try it out and you don't like it, that's fine. But I studied biology at university, and
Right.
obviously,
Well, yeah, absolutely. That's very important. Yeah.
yeah. So brilliant. Everyone should consider science. It's just fun, isn't it?
It's fun, but ultimately it could save your life.
Yes, exactly.
Which is as elemental as you can get.
Okay, everyone. Well, thank you all for watching, and thank you very much, Gavin, for coming to talk with us again. So, I will see you in a future video, and please have a nice time. All right.
Stay
Bye.
safe. Bye.